LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Now listen. When we were in Puerto Vallarta earlier this year, I realized how much I missed swimming, especially over these last 2.5 years of the plague. We don't have a pool at our house. We have room in the backyard, but we'd have to take out these gorgeous trees we planted 33 years ago, and I hate killing trees. Good thing is, I discovered this brand new local pool 5 minutes from my house, and because I'm old, I can swim for less than $1 a pop. Such a deal. This morning, I'm finishing up my 1.5 mile swim, and there's this guy in the lane next to me who I've seen before. He says to me, "Man, you really are a strong swimmer. I hope I'm as strong when I'm your age. What are you, 70? My swimming goggles are tinted, but obviously he sensed the daggers flying from my eyes as he quickly adjusted it down. 60? 55? Sure, I said. 60. Even though that actually isn't happening until next year. Of course, it was early morning. I had a 3-day growth of beard and probably looked like a homeless person in a blue Speedo swimming cap. But 70? Really? I wanted to pop him. When starting to write one of these podcast episodes, I ask myself the question, what am I working on or going through right now? I do this because I want to avoid replicating stories, and sometimes after 47 episodes, it happens. But if I start with what am I working on or going through right now, then I know I'm starting from a fresh place I've never been. And yes, I have a big odometer turning birthday next year. I've had birthdays with zeros in them before, but I don't know. The big 60 feels a lot more momentous than the earlier ones. Of course, recently reading Susie Orman's The Ultimate Retirement Guide for 50 Plus didn't help. It's a great read, by the way, though she starts every other sentence with the phrase, "That said." I started counting them and lost track at 100. Please, Susie, everybody, I beg you, stop using the overused phrase, "that said." It is so pre-COVID. Susie says turning 60 is a milestone, and your 60s decade is a major decade of change. Well, that said, no kidding, Susie. Obviously, this is not the first milestone in my life. Graduating high school and escaping Iowa to attend college in Minneapolis was a huge one. Even my move from Minneapolis to LA was a big milestone. I'd been in college for 5 years and decided that it was time to move on to the big time, and that meant either New York or LA. My friend Peter had written a show I was in and moved to New York and was working as a temp while trying to get his writing career started. He invited me out for a visit that winter, and I accepted. Peter lived in a tiny studio, 2-floor walk-up, not too far from Macy's. It was cheap because, well, it was pretty much squalor. He had roaches, a pull-out sofa bed that we both shared, and his bathroom door had so many coats of paint on it, it wouldn't close. This was fine if you were taking a leak. I mean, we were both guys, but if you needed the door closed, well, let's just say I ran down to Macy's every time I needed to do that. The store security must have thought I was turning tricks in their bathroom several times a day. Peter and I would sit up at night in his sofa bed, gossiping about our friends in Minneapolis, and him howling with laughter at my imitation of Jane Hathaway from the Beverly Hillbillies. The only thing missing from those nights was a bottle of nail polish and setting each other's hair in hair rollers. I saw great Broadway shows that trip, including the original production of La Cage aux Folles. I remember the guy who played the son, who was about my age. In fact, all the young guys on Broadway that trip had TV credits. I thought, maybe I should consider going to LA. I'll get my TV series, then I'll be able to do any Broadway shows I want to. Sounds easy. Sure, that's what I'll do. Oh, to be young. One of the things you did before graduating the U of M theater department was you put together a recital where you showed off what you could do in an hour-long show. I thought recital was kind of a weird name for it. I mean, when I think of recitals, I think of my sister's dance recitals back in Iowa. Our folks would have to spend money for the dance classes. Then, for the recital, buy these god-awful JonBenet Ramsey costumes. They'd pile so much makeup on these 10-year-old girls, they all look like hookers in green Tinkerbell outfits. Instead of watching reruns of Lost in Space, we'd have to waste a good Saturday watching these mostly talentless children twirling endlessly on stage. When I put my recital together, my last semester, I decided to call it Hola Antoine. At some point in college, I had acquired the nickname Antoine. To be honest, I have no idea where this came from. I didn't speak French. They never even offered it at Urbandale High School. I would sign things Antoine with a little registered trademark symbol after it. What was that about? And adding hola, which was Spanish, was odd because I didn't speak that either. Good Lord, Mexican food in 1970s Iowa was Taco Bell, and a street taco meant a taco that you had physically dropped on the street. However, Hola Antoine was a catchy title, and my friend Jay designed a cool poster. It was 47 minutes of material about my having moved from Iowa and comedy bits about my time in Minnesota with some of the characters I had developed. Esther Adele, a Minnesota widow with a penchant for consumer advocacy, Chuck Dresden, a perv dentist, and Kippy Fickett, a 10-year-old Midwest boy who wasn't too different from myself at 10. I ended it all with an eye to moving to La La Land, and I closed it by singing When You Wish Upon a Star. I cringed that I chose that song. At least I did choose the Lana Cantrell version with the proper Barry Manilow modulation for the last verse. In hindsight, Hola Antoine was a regrouping and getting back to who I was in order to frame up where I was going. I kind of think I'm doing that now. We're just coming out of 2.5 years of COVID, which, in truth, wasn't all bad. For instance, I now feel no guilt in saying, sorry, I don't do groups. A girl from high school called to get together when she was in town. I thought twice about it as we had gotten together pre-COVID, and it was boring, but I said, sure. Sadly, it was just as boring the second time around. My friend Rhonda said, what? You said yes to that lunch? She said, you need to learn to say no. In fact, I say it right out of the gate. Rhonda, would you like to meet for dinner? No. But no. I said, really? You get by with that? She said, absolutely. Sometimes they only get 3 words out. Rhonda, would you? No. Rhonda, I'm working on it. One downside of COVID was the COVID-10. Okay, the COVID 15 pounds which crept up. I'm looking at photos from our family reunion last month and not liking the looks of my pectorals. Okay, for somebody who's 70, they don't look bad. But I'm not 70. Suddenly, I'm having a COVID catharsis of sorts. That it's really time for me to let go and move on from these last 2.5 years and some of the bad habits I picked up. Enough already. Been there, done that. I made it through the rain. Time to get back to working out and swimming regularly before I grow full-fledged COVID man boobs. I just heard that one of my favorite teachers from Urbandale High School passed away. She was our psychology teacher and was quite the character. Lenny Sheldall sported an enormous mane of teased red hair, wore pantsuits that showed cleavage, and walked with the most sturdy of gaits in very tall Candy's high heels. She commanded the class with the authority of a drill sergeant, and apparently she told people she worked for the CIA, which, to be honest, wouldn't have surprised me. It added mystery to this somewhat androgynous character, and I found her fascinating. Mrs. Sheldall taught us all about Freud, schizophrenia, and the psychological theories of toilet training. I mean, really, wouldn't litter boxes be a possible solution for that? Just an idea. I had Mrs. Sheldall during my last semester before graduating high school, and I began acting out in class. I don't remember the specifics, but she was quite annoyed with me, and one day had had enough and ripped me a new one in front of everybody and told me to stay after class. I did, and she stood over me yelling, "Tony, what are you doing? You never acted like this. You need to pass this class to graduate." My facade of phony aloofness broke, and I just lost it. I know. I don't know why I'm acting up. I'm excited about everything coming up in my life. Then what is it? Mrs. Sheldall demanded. Just scared, I guess. And the tears started flowing. Okay, so excited and scared at the same time, and acting out sure wasn't the best way to deal with this. Her intervention worked, and I was soon back to my old self for the rest of the semester. Too bad I couldn't have channeled all that angst into a recital back then. So now, I embark on my post-COVID catharsis and pre-60 preparation with a lot of excitement, and I'll be honest, a bit of trepidation. Just keep yourself in check, Antoine. Don't act out, buy a boat, or grow a ponytail at age 60. Do your homework, and then see where it takes you. This 48th podcast is the end of Season 4, which means if I want to keep creating these, next up is Season 5. In the musical Sunday in the Park with George, Stephen Sondheim says, "Anything you do, let it come from you. Then it will be new. Give us more to see." You know, Sondheim's like Shakespeare, right? They just knew everything. Yes, Mr. Sondheim, I am moving forward and turning these post-COVID man boobs back into pectorals if it's the last thing I do, damn it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and see you in Season 5.
LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two.